Welcome, Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists. I am Maggie Ingalls, and I am your celebrant for today. Our parish minister, Reverend Lisa Hike, is away today, and with us, in her place, we have Reverend Barbara Meyers. I am very pleased to introduce you to Reverend Barbara Meyers. She is a Unitarian Universalist community minister with a mental health ministry based in Fremont, California. She is Assistant Director of the Life Reaching Across to Life Peer Support Center, the author of a mental health curriculum for congregations, and of the book Held, Showing Up for Each Other's Mental Health, which was published by Skinner House Books in July 2020. She is the president of the UU Mental Health Network. She served on the UUA's Accessibility Committee beginning in 2005 and was active in the creation of Equal Access, EQUUAL, Access. She served on the UUMA's Task Force on Disability in 2017-2018. She was also active in the creation of the AIM program to make congregations accessible and inclusive of disability. Each week, we gather to connect with each other and to pay attention to both the beauty and the brokenness of our shared life on earth. We gather to be part of something bigger than ourselves and to explore new relationships and ways of being. Each week, we join Unitarian Universalists all around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith. So I invite you now to light your chalice at home, and as you do so, to listen to these words. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. I invite you now into a moment of receptivity and reflection as we share the joys and sorrows of this community. We make sacred the milestones of our lives when we share them with each other. We have here a bowl of water and some stones. If you would like to share your joy or sorrow with all here, you can type it into the chat and then choose a stone in the bowl to represent your joy or sorrow. If you have a joy or sorrow, or even just a concern that you do not need to share with everyone, type stone in the chat and then choose a stone in the bowl to represent the milestone you are holding in the silence of your heart.
A prayer to live with grace. May we discover through pain and torment the strength to live with grace and humor. May we discover through doubt and anguish the strength to live with dignity and holiness. May we discover through suffering and fear the strength to move toward healing. May it come to pass that we be restored to health and to vigor. May life grant us wellness of body, spirit, and mind. And if this cannot be so, may we find in this transformation and passage moments of meaning, opportunities for love, and the deep and gracious calm that comes when we allow ourselves to move on. The words of Rabbi Rami M. Shapiro. Let us hold silence for a time.
Our reading today is a selection from Reverend Meyers' book, Held. And the anecdote is originally from Mark Morrison Reed, a UU minister. Nate was maybe in his 30s. He would sit in the front row, rubbing his legs and rocking back and forth during the worship service. He was a bit awkward, his voice loud, and from time to time he would disappear. One weekday, Donna, who is Mark's wife and co-minister, and Mark were at a bridge party with the senior members of the congregation. They were mostly in their 80s, and we gathered in a nice suburban apartment. There were plenty of appetizers, serious card playing, and some light conversation until the host said, "I don't know how you put up with that young man fidgeting around throughout the service. It's just terrible." What happened next left me stunned. One octogenarian said, "You do know it's his medication that makes him do that." A retired public health nurse told us she had spoken to him and knew what had been bothering him. A former university president said, "I was once institutionalized." And someone else said, "My son has bouts like that." Neither Donna nor I said a word. My amazement turned to pride, and I knew why Nate kept coming to church. It was not about sermons, whether scholarly or entertaining. It was not about universalism or our professed belief in a loving God. It was our lived theology, God made manifest in the love that surrounded that young man.
Hello. It's so good to be here with you today. I've been here several times before, and it's great to meet with your congregation. As was said at the beginning, I am a UU community minister. Since 2004, I'm at the Fremont congregation, and my ministry focuses on mental health issues. I'm the assistant director of the Life Reaching Across to Life peer support organization in Fremont. I'm board president of the UU Mental Health Network, and I've been in the leadership circle of Equal Access and on the UU Addictions Ministry team. So I'll start with a story today. There's a woman in a UU congregation who told me this story. She and her husband had a daughter who had developed some serious mental health problems and was in a psychiatric ward at a nearby hospital. She and her husband were both worked, and they were rushing home from work each day, grabbed a little bite to eat, and then they went off to visit their daughter to support her. One day they got, in the middle of all this episode, they got a call from someone in the congregation saying, so-and-so in the congregation, it just went into the hospital for an operation. We're trying to help the family out. Could you possibly prepare dinner for them, or a casserole or something to bring to their home? And they wanted to help out, so they brought a casserole. They fixed one and brought it over to this other congregation member house. And when they're driving to the hospital, she told me, she thought, wait a minute, we have a member in the hospital. We could use some help with casseroles too. How come nobody's bringing us casseroles? And of course, they hadn't asked for casserole because many times people don't want to know that they have a member in their congregation that has a mental health problem. Also true of people with addiction problems. So sometimes these problems are called the no casserole disease. And people don't bring casseroles over to your house if somebody in your family has a mental health problem. So my message for you today is this no casserole disease has to stop. I'll give you just a little bit of background of the importance of working on mental health. It's estimated that 1 in 5 American adults each year has some sort of diagnosable mental health condition. Nearly half of these coexist with addiction. And in fact, this has gotten worse since the pandemic. I've heard stories about 1 in 4 people, adults, now are having mental health problems. So you can say that your pews are filled, and your Zoom screens now in the pandemic land are filled with people that are living with mental health problems and their loved ones. And many of them are suffering silently. Because of the stigma, they don't want to admit that there's something in your family they've had this problem. We'll start out with some definition of terms from the American Psychiatric Association. Mental health is defined as the successful performance of mental health function resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with other people, and the ability to adapt and change and cope with adversity. So mental function, productive activities, fulfilling relationships, and adapting to change. A mental disorder is defined as a behavioral syndrome creating impairment or distress in thinking, mood, or behavior that has been diagnosed by a mental health professional. So it's the syndrome means a collection of symptoms, and the fact that it's creating distress in thinking, in mood, or in behavior, and it's been diagnosed. Another important concept is that mental health is a continuum. It isn't like everybody's all healthy or all sick. We go across this continuum as we live our lives and go through the difficult times that many people's lives go through. Talk about mental health recovery. This is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Association of the U.S. government. Mental health recovery is defined as a process of change in which people improve their mental function, mental health, and wellness. They live a self-directed life, so they're deciding for themselves what they can do, and they strive to live to their full potential. It's not necessarily the absence of symptoms or the absence of the need for medications. So people can be living in recovery. In fact, that's what I consider myself to be. I'll talk a little bit about my own story. This picture here is a picture of me with my 10-day-old daughter, Carol, in 1978. And shortly thereafter, I I had postpartum depression, very serious. I was suicidal, and it was resulting in my hospitalization. And this is a very shattering experience for me. I felt like I was a damaged human being. Even though I had good mental health care, I was able to get back into my job and my life and being a mother, but I felt like a damaged human being and was unhappy for many years. After my daughter was actually 8 years old, I went through a re-examination of my life and thought I simply do not want to be living like my life like this anymore, and who's making me do it anyway. Went back to my psychiatrist and said I wanted to meet more often and really discover what was wrong and do anything that I could in order to improve the way I was living my life. One of the things that he asked me was, what was I doing for myself spiritually? And I said nothing, because up to that time, even though I'd grown up in a Christian household and went to Sunday school and youth group and so forth, I hadn't been to church in almost 20 years at that point. And he asked me if I would like to try meditation. And my first thought when he said that was, what? You've got to be kidding me, sitting around doing nothing? How is that going to help anything? But I had promised myself that I was going to try whatever he suggested because I was so unhappy with how I was living my life. So he gave me a little book. He taught me how to meditate. I sat sometimes for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at first, and I went back to see him. And this is maybe 2 or 3 weeks after he had originally told me that. And I told him, I don't know where it came from, but I'm happy. And I'll never forget what he said. He pointed at me and he said, it came from you. And it was one of those moments where, he's right. It's true. There is something precious and unique about me that's within me that was completely different from any of my way of thinking before. And I had a spontaneous religious spiritual experience after this, and in fact was hospitalized again because it was such a dramatic experience. But it was not a shattering experience this time. I thought that all of these other patients in the psychiatric ward are all God's children. They're not folks that I want to not admit that I was there before. These are all God's children, just like me. And I also was God's children. As a result, I had what I would consider a rebirth experience. And even though aspects of my behavior at that time were what people would call psychotic, I don't regret it at all. And I was reborn into another way of thinking about myself, and in fact, eventually ended up changing my life's purpose. I had previously been a software engineer at IBM. I stayed there until retirement age and decided to change my career, went to seminary at Stark King and became a community minister focusing on mental health. So I talk about what is it that mental health ministry consists of. It consists of healing the whole person. It isn't just take these pills and everything's going to be okay. There are lots of parts of people's lives that are important. Not only the spiritual life, but they're in the congregation. The congregation also, with adult education, can contribute to a person's intellectual life and learning, encouragement to physical activity, encouragement to being out in the environment and paying attention to what's happening in the environment, helping to a person to get their financial life in order, helping the person to find something to do with their life that they think is important, and that some occupation that's important that they value. Social life is really important. Relationships with other human beings, and also emotional life. Learning how to recognize when people are having a difficult time and being supportive of them. all of these things are things that the regular people in congregations can help their congregants with when needed. So I'll talk a little bit about mental health problems. It's not only a mental health problem, there are spiritual implications to this. A mental health crisis is a spiritual problem as well as a psychiatric one. A person may experience doubts about their selfhood, their truth, meaning, their love, what they have agency to do. It may undermine their faith in the divine or their belief in justice. And in fact, many founders of world religions had experiences which, when you look at the descriptions of them, sound very much like psychiatric illnesses. So what is this that we're dealing with here? The kinds of things that are helpful to people spiritually are some kind of spiritual practice. Not only going to church and being in a community, but also meditation. It was helpful to me. Prayer. Often people say that the first thing that they do when they have a mental health problem is they pray to be given relief from it. Engagement with music, or some people that go into spiritual direction, or Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga, or chanting. And then this is just a partial list. There's lots of things that people can do, but and many of them are helpful with mental health problems. One of the most important beginnings to recovery from a mental health problem is a sense of hope, the sense that things might possibly be able to get better. And we may need to hold hope for someone if they don't see it. I'll tell you a story about when I was first in the hospital way back in 1978. My doctor said he could help me, and I thought, he just tells that to everybody. And my family said that they hoped that I would get better, and I thought, I'm just a burden to them. I shouldn't even be here. And then another patient came and talked to me, and she said she'd been in the hospital for 3 weeks, and she'd been quite ill when she came in, and now she was just about ready to be released, and she felt so much better. And she wanted me to know that it was possible to get better. And when I heard that from her, I thought, maybe there's hope for me. Maybe there's hope for me. That was the start of my recovery. So I got that from up here rather than from any of the standard mental health treatments. But that hope is so important, and we can hold hope for people even when they can't see it. Another very important part of recovery is presence. And by presence, you mean being with someone, actively listening without judgment, validating the person's feelings, even if you don't agree with what they're saying, not giving advice, letting that person work through something on their own. If they ask for advice, ask them, what do you see as the alternatives? And many times they have some really good alternatives in mind. Presence is a gift. It is a sacred gift. I'll tell you a story. When I was first an intern in my ministry at a fairly large church, there was one Sunday morning where people were bustling around, getting ready for the service. And a woman who I knew would seriously, she had a lot of anxiety. And she came up to me and said, I'm so anxious. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. What can I do? And I thought, oh dear, what can I possibly tell her? So I suggested that we went off to a quiet room and sat down, and I held her hand, and I was thinking in my mind, what in the world am I going to tell her to do? I'm going to be a failure as a minister if I can't think of things to tell people to do. And so I was thinking these thoughts, and after a minute or two, she turned to me and she said, I feel so much better just being here with you. What a lesson for me, what she needed was somebody to be present with her and to care and to just be quiet and calm with her. That's what she needed. And I have learned this story many a time in my ministry of just being with somebody when they needed someone there. I remember one woman, the mental health center where I work, who was, I could see her mental state was deteriorating, and I knew she'd been previously helped by a hospital visit, so I asked her if maybe we could go to the hospital and I'd be willing to go with her. And she agreed. So we went to the hospital, and I sat there with her and helped her fill out the forms and so forth and got herself admitted. And a couple of weeks later, when she came back, she said, "Barbara, I want to tell you something. That day when you sat there with me in the hospital and you helped me fill out the forms and you wouldn't leave me until I was admitted, sometimes that's what gets me through the day, to remember that somebody cared about me that much to do that." Another big lesson for me. It didn't take any great nothing that I didn't have to go to school to learn that or anything. It was just being a human being that cared. And that is something that we can all give to other people, being present. I'll give you a story. I know I've spoken at this church before, and I've actually done this before, so you may remember if you were there. Many times when I've asked to speak in congregations, I ask them, tell a little bit of my own story, not because my own story is so incredibly important, but because I know it makes it, when a respected figure comes in and says that they've been through it, it makes it safe for the other people to be through it. So at the end of the service, I usually ask people to rise in body or spirit if they or a loved one of theirs has lived with a mental health problem. And every time I've done this, there's been somewhere between 80 and 100% of the people will stand up, and they all look around and can't believe that everybody else is standing up. And then they talk about it in coffee hour. So it's not a stigma anymore, since they know that everybody has been there. So I'm going to try this with you a little bit later in this service. We'll see what happens on a Zoom version of this kind of thing. So what helps when the individual is living with a mental health problem? Professional or peer help. So getting a professional person like a psychiatrist or a therapist or something, or sometimes people have bad experiences with that, and peers can be very helpful, or both professional and peer can be helpful. Learning how to take care of your body, eating well, getting enough sleep, getting enough rest, getting exercise, caring for yourself, keeping healthy, learning how to manage your stress, learning what helps you when you're stressed out and what kinds of things hurt you when you're stressed out. Being aware of your emotions, knowing sometimes people go through cycles of their illnesses, and knowing that the early warning signs of when something might be going wrong, so that you can take evasive action before it gets really bad. Enriching your life in some way, usually some sort of creative activity, art or weaving or learning something or writing, or some way of enriching your life and feeling like you are learning and you're gaining. And then finally, I've talked about this before, engaging with your spirituality. So what about the family members of the loved ones? Also, it's important, or can be very helpful, to get professional help or to peer help. And the organization that helps the most is in peer help for families is National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. They have a program called Family to Family, which is I think it's 10 to 12 week session where family members will teach other family members what has helped them. And it's been very helpful for many people. Learning how to communicate effectively, the kinds of things that will get your message across to your loved one, and the kinds of things that hinder getting your message across. Learning to help the loved one live with their situation, getting them to appointments, making sure that they have the medications that they need, helping them to get outside and do other things with their lives. And then finally, don't let this take over. Have a life of your own. So what about COVID? How does this change things? By any measure that you look at, mental health situations have gotten worse during COVID. One of the first things is there's fear for their families, uncertainty, what's going to happen, what's going to happen financially to my job if my job got laid off from my job because of it. These kinds of things, fear and uncertainty, are normal reactions. You're not ill if you're fearful or you have uncertainty, unless it gets to be really severe. Ways that people can help themselves: creating new routines for themselves, regular sleep and wake times, limiting exposure to news and limiting exposure to social media, and trying to keep only to those things which are reputable and are going to give you truthful things. That's really important. Developing some sort of attitudes within your life that are helpful, like finding humor in every day. Laughter sometimes can really be a really important part of releasing the kind of stress that people under. And also, everybody is going through a hard time, so try to be non-judgmental and non-reactive when you run into a situation or a person that's really problematic. Reinvent self-care for yourself. Stay hydrated. Make sure you're getting enough to eat. Get outside. Get exercise. Engage in spiritual practice. We said that before, how helpful that is. And then use this as a time to make sure you keep engaged and relate with your loved ones and your pets. Sometimes that's really important. And then reframe things or reflect. Think to yourself, what's something that I otherwise would never have had the opportunity to do? Maybe I can do that now that we're in this kind of limbo area. We'll talk about things. There are factors that make it difficult to get good mental health care. Insurance or money issues is right up there near the top. Sometimes you can't get coverage, or you don't have it, or it's inadequate. Many practitioners don't take insurance and you have to pay out of pocket. There's a lack of a wide availability of mental health treatment, especially for people who have money issues. Sometimes it's hard to find a practitioner that's accepting new patients, and alternative therapies that people might be able to use are sometimes too costly and not widely available for people. Also, there's cultural, linguistic, and geographic issues. People who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, LGBTQ, teens, people that don't speak English, a lot of these are specialties or people that specialize in those areas, or that you have to look for someone who's going to be friendly to you in those areas. And sometimes that's a problem finding some people like that. And also, looming very large is the involvement in the criminal justice system. The jails and prisons are full of people that have mental health problems. And Alameda County here, Santa Rita Jail, 40% of the people have mental health problems, 40%. And then any kind of engagement with the police can lead to incarceration, and sometimes police even shoot people because they think they're being threatening. I've had two people that I know personally have had members of their family killed by the police when they've been called for mental health emergencies. It's really, really tragic. And sadly, often the most troubled people get the worst care because they can't afford it, or because they end up in jail. All is not lost, however. There are many fine peer and self-help groups that are free. The place I work with the Alameda County Network of Mental Health Clients is free to any of the people because we get our support and funding from the county. Some local governments have social services that are free or on sliding scale. Some people can find support online. Some support groups have free online support. Then many of the suggestions that I had on what helps the individual a few charts back don't have a cost associated with them. If you're looking to do sort of some social justice work for mental health, there's all kinds of places you can help. Working on economic justice issues so that people can afford it. Working on abuse prevention to maybe even head it off before it starts. Looking to find support and treatment alternatives for people in your community. Involvement in the mental health system. In California, all of the mental health boards have a mental, or all the counties have mental health boards, and they're often looking for members to be on the mental health board, and it's a very good place for people to serve and do good work. Publicity when something goes right or something goes wrong. Involving in direct service in creating support groups for individuals in a congregation, or referrals to existing other support groups that are in the community, and organized activism. That I know there's groups in Alameda County and elsewhere trying to get involved with trying to keep people out of jails and prisons. Lots of things you want to do if you want to get involved. And finally, I wanted to show you this picture of a book that I've written called Held, Showing Up for Each Other's Mental Health. It was published last year by Skinner House Books. And there's a study guide, and it's shows you how every member of a congregation could be helpful for mental health. So I'm going to stop. Thank you so much for letting me speak here today. It's a pleasure to be with you.
This congregation depends entirely upon the generosity of its members and friends. All that we give in time, talent, and treasure is what sustains this community and makes it not just a sanctuary for us to return to for spiritual nourishment, but an oasis from which we can go out into the world carrying the waters of life. Each fourth Sunday, our congregation donates to a local organization that shares our values. Today, that organization is Voices, which serves foster youth in Napa, Solano, and Sonoma counties. Here to speak about the work of this organization is Jesus Flores.
Hello, Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists. My name is Andres Cantera. I'm the program manager for Voices Napa. For those of you unfamiliar with Voices, we are a youth-led drop-in center servicing youth between the age of 16 to 24, specifically in areas such as housing, education, employment, overall health and wellness, as well as a fully functional drop-in center for youth to come in and access. In times such as now for COVID, we are having a wide variety of services be shown through Zoom, Facebook, Instagram to really reach the young people where they're at. In times that we are hoping we can return to our normal space, we will host these events in our space for young people to be able to come together and feel like they have a home for themselves and a space that they can call their own. On behalf of the young people and my staff, I'd like to say thank you so much for the support you provide to not only our specific population, but as the community as a whole, and thank you for being a part of our community. We appreciate you, and I look forward to being able to develop a relationship with each and every one of you in one capacity or another. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesus. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The offering will now be gratefully received. You can donate by going to our website at nvuu.org and clicking on the donate button, or send a check to us at NVUU, 1625 Salvador Avenue, Napa, California. So if you want your donation to go to your pledge, write pledge on the memo line or in the comment box when you click on the donate button. If you want your donation to go to Voices, put share the plate in the comment box or on the check memo line. So once again, our website is nvuu.org. And you can also get our address at that website. So thank you very much. Thank you for your many gifts, and thank you to Reverend Meyers for this wonderful service today. All you do and all you give are vital to building the beloved community in our region and beyond. If you are visiting today for the first or second time, we invite you to come to our website at nvuu.org and fill out the visitors form. This will get you onto our mailing list and you will receive information about upcoming events and services. We also invite you to join our Zoom social hour after the service. You can find the link to get there on our website, which, again, is nvuu.org. The social hour will start 10 minutes after the service ends. We look forward to meeting you.
Now, in witness to the impact that this issue has on the community here in Napa, I ask you to type in yes in the chat if you or someone you love is living with a mental health problem, or type in no in the chat if this doesn't apply to you. In public witness. Thank you. You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me, sing to me quietly?
Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your service and commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth, and may we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. The words of Roddy Biggs. Amen.